Blessings, good evening. Being Tuesday night, we have some questions have come in, so I'll try to answer them. First question: what should I do if I wake up at night and see a dark shape and think it is a ghost? Well, you've got a few options there. You could just roll over and go to sleep again, couldn't you? Luang Por Chah really emphasized going to sleep mindfully at night. It's one of those normal functions of a human being. Every day or every night we go to sleep. And the practice of mindfulness we develop in all activities. So going to sleep mindfully is a practice in itself. So ideally, establish mindfulness maybe on your meditation object that you normally use, such as the breath, or reciting Buddho before you go to sleep at night. For monks, we even plan what time am I going to get up, or make a resolution: as soon as I wake up, I'll get up and carry on meditating. I'll go back to my meditation. That's also a good thing to do, so that you don't indulge in sleep. We need to sleep to get rest, but we also indulge in sleep and spend time just lying there, enjoying the comfort, coziness of our bed. Perhaps sleep more than we need to sometimes. One of the problems is when you go to sleep, you go into deep sleep after the dream state, and then when you're woken by something, you have to try and re-establish mindfulness. That's your aim, and that may take some time. Your mind, you wake up, you have dreams, or you're fuzzy-headed sometimes. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, you're often not fully awake for a while, or you're just a bit slow, a bit unmindful. So then if you're in a bedroom or somewhere, and you see a shape or hear a sound, often it can be alarming or disturbing or just confusing as you're trying to re-establish your mindfulness as you wake up. And it's quite common that you wake up in the middle of the night and there is something unusual happening. Maybe not. Maybe if you're sleeping at home, it's not that uncommon. It's not that common. But if you stay out in the forest camping, like we do as monks, you're quite often woken up by some kind of surprise in the middle of the night. The sound of an animal close by. Could be a small animal. Like I've been woken up by thousands of ants biting me several times in my life, and it wakes you up very quickly. Or being rained on. Rain suddenly comes in the night and you're getting soaked. Trees swaying in the wind and you're worried whether the tree is going to fall over. Or occasionally you sense a presence. So maybe you see a shape or hear a sound and you think maybe there's somebody there, whether it's a human or a ghost. So these things do happen. I know one monk who was woken up with a bear licking his face. And bears can be quite aggressive, so if you wake up and you smell this bear and it's licking your face, you have to be careful, because if you annoy it, it may quickly bite your head off or something. I've never had a bear lick my face when I was asleep, but I had a rat once chewing my ear, woke me up. And I once woke up face to face with a poisonous snake, because sometimes if you're in the forest, snakes come to you. Once had a friend, another monk, who woke up, he had a python wrapped around him. So, you wake up, you've got to establish mindfulness, things have happened, and occasionally maybe you see a dark shape. What do? Well, it's just a dark shape, isn't it? It could be just a shadow, could be your imagination, or maybe it's some being such as a ghost. But if you establish mindfulness, or you try to establish mindfulness, the idea is just so that you're together. So you might go to the breath, just take a few deep breaths at that moment where you see the shape, or hear a sound, or you recite something. So the Buddha said if you're nervous, say you wake up in the middle of the night, recite a word or a phrase that makes you remind you of the Buddha. So in Thailand we use the word Buddho, from Buddha, Buddho, and you just recite Buddho, Buddho. So sometimes staying in the forest, you get experiences, they have a kind of ghost they call Pi which is like, this ghost sits on your chest and kind of, you feel frozen or paralyzed. You wake up and it's like someone has grabbed your chest very firmly. And all you have to do is recite Buddho, Buddho, and this feeling disappears straight away. So if you see a dark shape, just recite Buddho, Buddho, or chant Iti Piso, Bhagava, Arahang. Or if you're from the Mahayana tradition, maybe Om Mani Padme Hung. Something that brings your mindfulness up, clears your mind. And then that thing that you see or sense may just disappear. Or at the very least, any fear that you have, any nervousness disappears. And then when your mind is clear, reflect on it. Well, it was just a shape. No real danger. I mean, when did a black shadow ever hurt anyone? Not usually. It just is a shadow and it disappears, isn't it? But if you are still afraid, well, you might reflect on something very positive like the Buddha, or bring up the thought of kindness, compassion, metta, karuna, spread thoughts of compassion to yourself and then to any beings in the area, in the room or wherever you are. And your fear should subside quite quickly. And if you really think there's a ghost there, well, just share merit with it. You can actually sit up and chant, or sit and make a resolution in your meditation. May this being who's around receive the merits of my practice now, and may they be at peace, reborn in a good place. So you cultivate friendliness towards ghosts, if there is such a thing there. Sometimes it could just be literally just a shadow. You never know. But share merit. So establish mindfulness before you go to sleep is good, so that when you wake up you can continue, bring up the mindfulness again. And any unusual experience, just establish mindfulness, spread thoughts of loving kindness, you'll feel more relaxed, and then you'll calm down, you can see what you need to do. And quite often there's nothing you need to do, you just establish mindfulness and the whole thing just fades away. Dear Ajahn, I always thought I was not afraid of death, nor attached to my body. However, I still want to look good in front of everyone. Is this vanity? Yes. Short answer. You don't have to look good, but have a good mind, more important. Have a mind with mindfulness, with sila, morality, with kindness, and with wisdom. Then you won't have any suffering. It's natural, we're born into this world, we attach and identify to this body as self, and partly just the cultural conditioning and the pressure from society, partly our own attachment. We want to look good. We do want to impress others. Partly it's just based on sexual desire and your own desire to impress others, to be seen as attractive. It makes us feel good. So we dress up, we do our hair, we wear makeup, we dress up. And you see the world is full of that, isn't it? And people do that every day. Partly it's to please others and keep them happy, partly to please ourselves. And so many people say they really don't want to dress up, especially as you get older. You sort of you get tired of it all. But then you have to keep up appearances. So you go to work and you've got to dress nicely and look good so that your job goes well. People treat you well because they tend to treat you better when you look good. It's just one of those things. Everyone is thinking on this level. So we keep reinforcing our attachment to the body and the way it looks. That's why many people say when they come into a monastery it's liberating, because it doesn't matter so much how you look. Everyone has shaven head. If you're a monk, you just have your brown robes. If you're a lay practitioner, you wear white usually. You don't have to think about impressing people with the way you look. You are just who you are. You have your body, your hair and hairstyle, this one simple hairstyle. And you can focus on the more profound truths and the more deeper spiritual qualities such as mindfulness, wisdom, compassion, which are much more satisfying to the mind, much more useful to us as human beings, bring about better things for us than simply looking good in the way you dress or the way you present yourself. People living in the world, they lay practitioners, they often understand this. They get to a point where they realize, they are just dressing up maybe to fulfill a need in society. You go to work, you have to dress, wear makeup, do your hair, whatever, whether you're a man or a woman. You kind of get to a point where you just know that, well, you're just doing it to fulfill a function, a duty in society, but you're not too really bothered by it. You go home and you relax and you don't have to dress up. If you practice meditation and you reflect on these things, then it doesn't have to be a problem. But it can be a great attachment, obviously. And some people never seem to get beyond it. They're kind of trapped in this realm of always having to look good, impress, and buy more and more clothes and fashion and do their makeup and their hair and go to the gym and whatever they do. So reflect on it, the impermanence of the body, the impermanence of this feeling of attraction, feeling good about how you look or trying to impress others. Reflect on the suffering of it. You can never impress all the people all the time. You can impress some people some of the time. There'll always be someone who doesn't like you. There'll always be somebody who is not impressed. And so, of course, you're setting yourself up for suffering if you keep putting so much value on the way you look. You may turn on yourself, so you look in the mirror and you keep seeing the faults and the blemishes, so then you're annoyed with yourself. Also, other people don't appreciate you. You put all this effort into dressing up, looking good, and then you go out and maybe they ignore you, or they even find something wrong with the way you dress. It's the wrong color, it's the wrong this, the wrong style. A lot of suffering in this. And it's on a very superficial level of life, isn't it? So try to establish mindfulness and see you can be perfectly happy, but you may not look so good sometimes physically, the way you dress, the way you are. There'll be times when you don't look so good, but you can still be happy inside. Best of all is develop samadhi. If you develop samadhi on any level, you develop this inner happiness, contentment, and you let go of your body and the way you look. You really don't think about it at all. So this is why, hermits go off and live in the forest or in a cave, and they have maybe very old rag kind of robes and very simple clothing, and they don't ever look in a mirror. as a monk, you can go for long periods of time, you never really see yourself, you don't think of it, you're looking in a mirror. And you have this inner happiness that comes from your meditation, from jhana, from samadhi, and from insight, understanding the impermanent nature of these more superficial attachments. That would be the best thing to develop, an inner happiness that stays with you whatever outwardly you look like, whatever's going on the external level, it doesn't matter. So, try and separate between, as I said, I understand people in society, they do want to wear clothes because they've got to go to work, and it's just the way things are done in society. So you can follow that, but try to reflect on the impermanence of it and develop these inner qualities. Don't make it an end in itself, always to impress, to look good. You always see the suffering as someone who's really, like, I had a friend before I was a monk, he always had to look immaculate to impress the girls and just to feel good in himself. So all his other friends would tease him. They'd always sneak up to him. He had this beautiful hair and he's always combing his hair, making his hair look good. And they'd walk up behind him and mess his hair up just to annoy him. Or they'd, flick some bit of food at his clothing so they had a little stain there. That was because he was so vain, other people found it a little bit much, so they would tease him. So that's the trouble with vanity, isn't it? It's not an attractive quality. You try to be attractive to people, and so you're vain, but then other people see your vanity and they're not attractive, they find it ugly. So then they'll tease you or make fun of you. So try and recognize the attachment, the vanity, and let it go as much as you can. Now the question: why do you believe that love causes suffering? Well, I think you're referring probably just to ordinary love in the sense of between two people, perhaps, either family love between parents and children or between two partners. What you might call worldly love. And the trouble with worldly love is it tends to feed attachment, craving and attachment. It comes from craving and attachment and it feeds more of it. So you love someone, if you investigate this, if you love someone, there's this sort of sense you want to own them. You own them, they belong to you and they make you happy. But of course, that other person that you love, at least sometimes they'll do things that you don't want them to do, or things happen to them that you don't want to happen. If your loved one gets ill, you suffer because you're worried about them, you're afraid for them. Or if your loved one has a different opinion on something than you, then you might argue because you want them to have the same opinion of you as you do because you love them and you want them to think like you do and be like you. This is the problem. Love turns into attachment, which stimulates suffering. The fear of loss and separation, the worry, your loved one is not around, you can't see them, where are they? They're not picking up their phone, you worry, you panic. And of course, ultimately, the separation that comes from death, because love conditions attachment, it's a form of attachment. When you separate through death, then you suffer. So the Buddha encouraged us to develop the Brahma Viharas. You might call it unconditional love in different forms. So basic friendliness, goodwill of metta, compassion, the wish for ourselves and others to be free from suffering, sympathetic joy, rejoicing, being happy in the success, one's own success and the success and happiness of others, And then upekkha, equanimity, based on the understanding of karma, that we all have made karma and have to receive the fruits of our karma, everyone. So even the person you love has made karma, some good, some bad, and when the bad karma ripens, well, because of our love and our attachment, we suffer with them. Maybe we suffer more than them. Sometimes you sort of see somebody who loves another person getting really upset, the other person is not so upset, not so suffering so much, but we do perhaps. So these four qualities the Buddha encouraged us to cultivate. You might call this skillful loving, or the skillful side of cultivating unconditional love, meaning love without attachment. So that's love, well-wishing, without attachment, without seeking anything in return. But it's something you have to practice through meditation in particular, but also cultivating wisdom, reflection, and see, reflect on the kind of love you notice in yourself for others, for your family, your friends, people close to you. See how it can be mixed up with attachment, and how it, maybe your love is a very superficial one, in the sense you love this person as long as they make you happy, and then when they don't make you happy, you reject them. How often do we see that in our lives, or in people's lives around us? I love you as long as you make me happy and do what I want, and then when you don't do what I want, I'm not happy, then I want to get rid of you. And so love can turn to hate very easily. But metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha is developing this unconditional love. And particularly, it has these are spiritual qualities with nibbana as their ultimate goal. So if you really love someone, you want them to attain nibbana, to be enlightened, to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, to be free from craving and attachment, free from greed, anger and delusion. If you have true love for someone, that's what you wish for them. So if you have real unconditional love in the way the Buddha was encouraging us to develop, you would wish for everyone to go off and become a monk or a nun, maybe. So all those parents who say they love their kids, they'd be happy if their son or daughter became a monk or a nun. And how many parents are actually happy for that? And most of them say, no, that's the last thing I want you to do. I want you to go and study and get a good job and make money and have a family and have more suffering. But they leave the more suffering bit off the end of it. So they just say, I want you to get a good job, study, get a good job, marry, have kids, get a house, be successful, be famous, be powerful. But they don't tell you there'll be a lot of suffering in that. It's like they hide that bit. But if they really loved you, they'd be saying, go off and practice for nibbana, develop the Noble Eightfold Path. True love would be that. It's not very fashionable, is it? Doesn't sell very well. So yes, love does lead to suffering when it's mixed up with attachment, delusion, coming from ignorance. You can love people, but then you also have to let go of them at the same time. And that's tricky. It's something you have to contemplate. Loving with letting go. But keep at it and see where the suffering is. You'll see when you're over-attached to someone through love, you'll start to suffer, won't you? So look at the suffering, and that's where pointing to the attachment. They say you smother them. You smother them till they can't breathe. Maybe, if someone really loves you, you can't breathe, you can't move because of the love. It's too much attachment, maybe. That's something to reflect on. Ajahn, when a human dies, if he or she gets reborn into the animal realm, i.e. insects, some say that one human being will turn into a bunch of insects rather than just one. Is this related to the amount of energy that one's consciousness carries? Not sure that that's proven that one person dies and they're being reborn as a whole swarm of ants or something. Maybe it's possible, maybe not. Probably the first thing to note is that in the Buddhist cosmology and the Buddhist teachings, to be reborn as an animal is a realm of suffering. There's the four lower realms: animal realm, hungry ghost realm, Asura-gaya, demon realm, and then hell realm, the Abhaya Bhumis. So only a noble one, a stream winner or higher, has cut off the causes for rebirth in the lower realms. If you're just an ordinary human being, you're not a noble one, there's always that possibility of rebirth in a lower realm. This is why we keep practicing, making good karma, dana, sila, bhavana, to keep bringing up our minds so we're not creating the causes for rebirth in a lower realm, certainly not animal realm. But if one, through ignorance and misunderstanding of the truth, goes and makes a lot of bad karma, well, perhaps rebirth in a lower realm happens. So maybe reborn in a hell realm, maybe reborn in an animal realm. Whether that's really true, that one being becomes many small beings, difficult to prove, I'd say. It doesn't really matter, does it? Whether you're born as one cockroach or a swarm of cockroaches, it's not a good situation to be in. You wouldn't want to be an insect, would you? Insects live for a very short time. They probably have a lot of suffering, looking for food. They have a lot of predators, even just changing the weather and they die. So many ways insects die, so you really don't want to be an insect. If you see an insect, sympathize with them. Don't kill them, just spread metta to them, wish them well. Not sure there's much more I can say. Animal realm is a realm of suffering. Don't be reborn there. Seeing and hearing people's ugly words and behaviors irritates me, even though I know there is no need for me to feel so. But at those moments, there are still some negative waves appearing in my citta, and I don't know how to prevent that from arising. Well, if you establish yourself in those four Brahmaviharas, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, the negative waves won't arise. Or if they arise, you'll let them go automatically. If you make metta, for example, goodwill, your object, and it's something you develop every day, over and over again, you get used to cultivating goodwill. With that you get tolerance, patience, kindness, forgiveness, letting go, and it supports the other qualities of compassion, sympathetic joy and equanimity too. Then you won't pick up these negative waves. If they're arising through your old conditioning, you just notice them and let them go because of the power of mindfulness and then these wholesome meditation objects that you're developing. So of course, when you do see other people behave in ugly ways through their speech, their actions, it's ugly. There's a time once there was a yaka, these kind of giants who can be pretty rough, very aggressive, angry, jealous types. There's a yaka. They said the Buddha met this yaka, and the Buddha took a step back. And somebody questioned the Buddha. They said, "So you still have fear? You've met this yaka and you've taken a step back." Does that mean you have fear, fear for this yaka? And the Buddha said, no, the yaka though is their behavior is so ugly. They're so aggressive, angry, they have so many ugly mind states. I'm just taking a step back because it's ugly. So ugliness, mental ugliness, the ugliness of the states of mind that we can fall into is just the way it is, isn't it? It doesn't mean to say you have to be afraid of it, but you recognize the quality of something being ugly. So you may recoil from it. If you see extreme violence or someone treating another person very badly, taking advantage of them, tricking them or manipulating them or something, it's ugly. So you tend to, you mentally you can turn away, don't you? If you're not careful, that can turn into aversion. So you have to establish mindfulness. It's maybe hard to be mindful when you're seeing someone else being ugly or saying things that are not true or hurtful. But you're establishing mindfulness to stop your own mind, to stop your own mind going into aversion in that situation. So it's hard sometimes. Some people have to deal, as their job, they have to deal with all kinds of people who behave in ugly ways, and they have to just be very patient with it and keep their mindfulness and their wits about them, because it would be so easy to become depressed or angry meeting people who behave in those ways. So that's something we have to work at. So just keep working on the mindfulness, the patience, the resilience, the metta, the goodwill. And this will expose, when your mind starts to throw up aversion in any form, irritation, anger, ill will. When you're practicing these other more wholesome qualities regularly, it will expose the negativity, so you'll quickly see it, you can quickly let it go. There's a question in Thai, I'll translate it as well. หลวงพ่อค่ะกราบเรียนถามค่ะเวลาเราทำสมาธิแล้วรู้สึกว่าเราหยุดหายใจไปชั่วขณะบ่อยๆรู้สึกว่าลมหายใจของเราละเอียดจนรู้สึกว่าเราไม่หายใจค่ะอันตรายไหมคะไม่อันตรายดีถ้าเรามีสติและลมหายใจเบาจนแล้วก็ละเอียดจนกระทั่งไม่รู้สึกความเคลื่อนไหวของลมหายใจจิตนิ่งอยู่จุดเดียวหายใจไม่เข้าแล้วไม่ออกจิตนิ่งไม่ใช่ว่าเราจะตายนะร่างกายก็นิ่งใจก็นิ่งแต่หายใจละเอียดยังมีอยู่หายใจละเอียดยังมีผิวหนังเส้นผมเส้นขนมันยังเป็นรูอยู่ก็หายใจเข้าออกทางผิวหนังบางทีหายใจละเอียดจนกระทั่งเราไม่สัมผัสกับความเคลื่อนไหวของหายใจแต่บางทีชีพจรหรือหัวใจบางทีก็เด่นช้าลงทุกอย่างก็ช้าลงใจกายกับใจมันนิ่งสงบบางทีความรู้สึกของร่างกายหายไปเลยไม่รู้สึกกายเบาไม่มีน้ำหนักเหมือนเราลอยอยู่บนอากาศอันนี้เป็นอาการของสมาธิเป็นปิติกับสุขที่สำคัญก็คือรักษาสติไว้ถ้าหายใจเข้าออกจนกระทั่งมันหยุดหายไปก็รักษาสติอยู่กับใจตรงนั้นให้รู้อยู่ตรงนั้นให้นานที่สุดแต่อย่าเผลออย่าสงสัยเพราะความสงสัยขึ้นมาก็จะทำให้เราถอนจากสมาธิเช่นเราก็สงสัยหายใจไปไหนเราจะตายไหมจะอันตรายไหมอันนี้คือความสงสัยมันจะทำให้เราเริ่มฟุ้งซ่านเริ่มมีอารมณ์ขึ้นมาแล้วจะถอนจากสมาธิก็เลยเราต้องเชื่อ ระพุทธเจ้ากับครูบาอาจารย์ทำไปด้วยความมั่นใจด้วยศรัทธาจนกระทั่งจิตนิ่งเป็นสมาธิได้ถ้านิ่งพอสมควรสมาธิเกิดแล้วให้กลับมาพิจารณาร่างกายอาการ32ธาตุสี่ให้พิจารณาแยกแยะพิจารณาให้เห็นชัดเจนว่ากายนี้มันไม่ใช่ตัวตนเข้าถึงเขาเรียกความว่างเห็นความว่างคือรับกายนี้มันไม่เที่ยงมันทุกข์มันไม่ใช่ตัวตนเหลือแต่จิตที่เห็นชัดตามความเป็นจริง แต่เราฝึกไปนะแต่ไม่ต้องกลัวไม่มีอันตราย So the question was, if we are meditating, practicing mindfulness of breathing, and we get to the point where the movement of the breath is so refined that it disappears, but we're still aware, is that dangerous? And that's a very common thought that will come up for meditators. They're mindful and the breath has become so still that you can't sense the movement. The body is still, the mind is still. So you might get a few doubts arising. What is this new state? Maybe you feel very light. You can't feel the body anymore because the body has become so still. You're experiencing piti and sukha, rapture and joy. And the body is so light, you can't feel the weight of the body or sensations. Pain disappears. The body can feel like it's just floating on thin air or just disappears altogether, and all that's left is the mind. So that will bring up doubts, concerns. Am I going to die? What's going to happen next? What should I do next? Those kind of thoughts will come up and they'll actually distract you, pull you back from that state to a more normal state where you start thinking again. So try to, before you even begin the meditation, just remind yourself, whatever happens, if these sort of conditions come up as you're meditating, it's fine, there's no danger. You know, any time you could just open your eyes and you'll see you're just sitting there, there's no danger. The danger is simply your attachment to the body is kind of being challenged because now the body has disappeared and you're just focused on the mind with the breath and then eventually just the mind itself. So your normal experience of the body has changed and gone, so then you have concerns, doubts, worries, what's happening. One lady even came here once and she experienced this and she thought she was just going to float away and never come back. So she got very afraid. These are actually quite normal reactions because you're normally so used to identifying with your body, sensations, sound, sights, taste, smell, and then thoughts. When all that has disappeared, then it's unusual. So you may doubt it or worry about it. But just try to keep a steady mindfulness, keep knowing at that point. If the breath has disappeared, you just keep knowing at that one point. And just keep learning and looking and learning from the experience. And if your samadhi is fairly constant, then you can contemplate the body, actually bring the body out, consciously explore your own body, the 32 parts, the 4 elements. Go into your body and explore it. Ask questions, look at it, understand it better in light of the 3 characteristics: impermanent, suffering, not self. So I would say, generally speaking, there's no danger. If your breath disappears, it's just a sign that your mindfulness is very refined and very continuous. And that's good. So do it again. Repeat that experience. So that's the end of tonight's questions. We wish you well. Hope that your practice continues to flourish.